Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And for all of those watching, we're in West Rutland Library on Monday, September 16th. Joe needs to leave early because he has a senior class meeting. So if I could have a motion to go into executive session for a student matter so we could discuss it with him prior to him leaving.
I make the motion to go into executive session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. If we could move, approve the agenda, if there are any, sorry, additions, corrections. If not, a motion would be in order.
Move that we approve the agenda.
I second.
Motion by Kristen R., seconded by Seth. All those in favor?
Aye.
General public comment, we just have Lisa and she's later on the agenda. So you'll notice on the agenda, we kind of changed it around. That we put business at the top and the principal's reports at the bottom. It felt like setting in the meeting sometimes, we kind of get bogged down by the principal's reports, and by the time we get down to, not that they're not enlightening,
Not in a bad way.
but by the time we get to business that we need to discuss, everyone's kind of like,
Excited we burn our energy.
yeah. So the first thing was, and we discussed this at the last meeting, the Quarry Valley Sports Survey. So at the last meeting, Joe came with colors and a name and for Unified Sports and bass fishing, and knowing that both of those sports were happening, we didn't want to not allow those to start and go forward. Since that meeting has taken place, there has been a great deal of conversation out on the street, I guess we should say, about how that was handled, particularly when they referenced back Seth's comments about how we were working in Quarry Valley and listening to people and collaborating between communities, and everyone had a stake, and I was inundated with people who didn't feel like the process actually transpired in that manner. That in the event, should we merge and we Quarry Valley with one mascot and colors, that having less than 100 or less than 50 kids designate that seemed somewhat shy of what the goals were that we were discussing at the meeting. So
Wasn't there a survey sent around to the students in each
Only
school, according to
students.
Jeff?
only to students.
And Jeff was also very clear about
Joe.
that being, Joe, sorry. Joe was also very clear about that being the process every time he spoke about it.
So, I
believe
think
in
we
my
spoke
first
about
meeting
it
and
twice.
last time
When he
at least.
came about bass fishing, I think the survey went fairly late in the school year. I think the bigger concern was that that has a broader significance than just students in the school. If we were to rebrand that is across communities. And there was a great deal of conversation at several games from people from all communities that they feel like that they should have some buy-in. And more than one, more than two, more than a handful reference back to the goals that we discussed at the last meeting. So I spoke to Judith, and the thought was perhaps we could put something together for town meeting for all those that are coming to vote on our budgets, where we want them to be invested in stakeholders. And we could use the option or the colors and choice that we have now. And then there could be two others that everyone. The biggest outcry I heard, and I'm gonna tell you, I didn't even know this. Apparently there are no Wolverines in Vermont.
Yeah, there aren't anymore. But there would have been, just like I'm a Wolverine, but there aren't any in Michigan.
There are no Blue Devils.
There's no Blue Devils.
I don't know,
Phantom,
so,
there's
Shouldn't
no-
this just be decided by the kids? Have adults oversee it, but now adults aren't happy with the kids pick.
Yeah.
It's none of the adults, as long as it isn't something out of control, but now adults are getting involved.
I do
Now we
like
gotta
having
vote
a-
on it. This is,
well, I think,
Town
More than
meeting
what it
or
should have
something
been.
about it at town meeting. Maybe it'll bring more people to those meetings.
well, I think the other issue is, and it's something that I really want to hold the line on, is voting on issues that are not on the agenda. So this was not an item warned on the agenda. It was something that came up during the conversation. So there was, and we shouldn't be taking action on items that are not warned on the agenda. That's bad practice in general. And I'm not dismissing what the kids came up with, and, it may be, but I also think we do have to look back and think about what we said at the goals, that we are looking to incorporate and collaborate with all stakeholders. And
That makes sense. I agree.
Yeah, so will we be in a purgatory phase until town meeting
no,
day
we're
comes around?
currently,
Or
we
we're going to
only
change
have,
it?
we only have unified sports and bass fishing right now. And, so I don't think we're not expending a huge amount of money, and a portion of that was grant money anyway. But I think, if we continue on this path and we add 2 or 3 or whatever additional, activities, not necessarily sports, and they are branded Quarry Valley, that it would be to our benefit to be unified in that.
it's gotta be
It's-
something that's in Vermont.
So it,
I'm just pointing out
No.
that all three of ours are gonna have to change,
I'm not
correct?
saying, I'm not saying that.
Like
I'm
it'd be
just,
something not to do with death. Devil, phantom,
It's gotta be. Lord.
so,
and,
animal at least is a little something you can get around.
but it's likely to change. So the bass fishing team will be the Quarry Valley Wolverines in what, black and purple, if I remember correctly?
Yes.
And then after town meeting day for, let's say, the, what would it be, 2020, 2021 school year, it will likely be different.
I
I
have.
don't think we were talking about voting on it
No.
at town meeting. We were talking about having a survey
Survey.
having
out where people could fill it out.
Yeah.
And maybe give them some selections,
So have 3 choices, have the blue, or whatever, purple and black.
That we would
and-
then change to whatever the survey results pointed towards.
Right,
Right, okay.
with having all communities
have the
and sending it,
opportunity to
have the opportunity, send it to the students, send it to the teachers and parents, yeah.
And nothing excites a community more than talking about school colors and mascots. It's
That's what I
always a
said. Maybe
hot
they'll actually
topic.
come to
You
the
wouldn't think so,
informational
but we'll
meetings.
think
It
if
is
they
always a
know.
hot topic.
Well, it's
Very much
amazing
so.
how
Kids want, but
hot the topic has been.
Yeah.
So if there's no,
Always.
That's okay.
that we would make up a survey and have it out at town meeting for voting day.
Who's
Yeah.
the we part? Who's actually gonna write it up?
I can do it, it's not gonna be difficult, it would just be, if you want 3 options, 4 options, and we can put the existing option in.
I think that should go in.
The other option was black and silver, I think, when we discussed in Polteny.
Why should we not reinvent the wheel and simply use the exact same survey that was already sent to the students and just see if the community would like to override them?
So I think the We could.
We have a copy of that somewhere.
It's always beneficial to get input, I think, when you have a positive rather, and asking people for their input rather than telling them what they can't.
Yeah, there's an art in asking survey questions, right? So.
Right, so what is the plan, I guess, is really my question.
So the plan would
Obviously, we have a
be-
long time to plan the plan.
Right,
but-
and we can think about it and come back at the next meeting with it. The plan, I would think, 4 choices. In fact, each high school could come forward if they wanted with the choice. You could use the existing one, and those are the 4 choices that go out to the 3 communities.
What do you all think?
We can put it on the agenda for the next meeting. We don't have to decide tonight.
No, I think we shouldn't decide tonight.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea.
So we'll put it on for the survey for the next meeting.
I have draft a survey plan.
Yes.
Okay. The second thing is you have the priority list in your packet for the facilities.
Well, I think that was handed separate.
Oh, in your, on top of
Looks
your
like
packet,
this.
I'm sorry. Do principals want to speak to each,
Maybe you didn't get them.
did you? Does everyone have one?
It's a
That's it.
spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a spreadsheet.
It's a one,
Do you have
line
two there?
spreadsheet on each page.
Look at mine.
It wasn't in the
Handed out
clip.
separately,
Separate.
so.
It was on top of the packet.
I can get somebody one. I can look on with somebody if there's any extras in here.
Oh, it's right by your left hand.
Oh,
No,
that's
that was Judith.
Oh, here, you can take mine. I don't need it.
Throwing this whole meeting into chaos
It's
tonight.
all right.
So I guess the first question is, are these listed in priority order? Are these what we're thinking that principals are thinking about building into the budget for this upcoming year? Don't everybody talk at
Well,
once?
for, like, so this, we did when we did our walk around with Gail at the elementary school and the high school.
Yep.
These are the items for me that have not been completed. I don't necessarily think we can put it all into one, to this next year's budget. It's listed there. This was, we just kind of threw this together on Friday, in terms of pricing and things. I didn't have time to obtain quotes from, it was requested on Friday, so. The 90,000 for my sidewalks is something we obtained probably 3 years ago. We have not made anybody come back to give us a bid, just because we're kind of, if we don't go through with it, people don't necessarily just keep coming back when, so I think as a board, we have to decide if we wanna put, the sidewalk project into the budget, or it's definitely a priority for me, so that's,
Wouldn't be the town, the sidewalk? No?
Still
No,
around
it's
there.
ours.
Goes around the perimeter of the school.
Okay.
And you'd like that, this,
Oh, okay.
for this
I
year if
mean,
we
it's
can.
definitely a safety hazard, and
And the roof already went through, right?
the,
No.
the shingled roof, this is slate roofing, we
Yeah,
can,
this is the old
yes.
part of the building.
Are we looking at them all, or are we going through those?
What?
Are we looking at them all or
Yeah,
going
are we-
school by
yeah.
school?
Well, the question was, from this list, are they in priority on the list? And how many would you anticipate if you could put in the budget, you would put in the budget?
So like for Pulteney Elementary.
So, for Pulteney Elementary, we've always kind of staggered things out. And, for example, you've got the roof in there for $25,000. That's not saying, that's if we decide to take and do one section. We don't necessarily need to do that now, but this is just forethinking. Should
Is
we
there any
need that
problem with the
down?
building right now,
What?
the roof? Is it deteriorating?
No, I mean, we patched it last year. We had some leaks, and you don't know where they're gonna be unless they leak. And we have the old roof bowls, so you don't know where those are going to, where there's a problem with them until they start to leak. but we have pretty much done it in-house. You know, the guys have been able to go up and fix it, that kind of thing. But if we were really going to look at the roof, we would do one section, and we're thinking 25,000. Do we need to do it? No, but we've always put it in there just in case.
The problem is though, if we let it go too long, it's gonna
Right.
cost you a lot
Right.
more.
Right,
And
that's,
it may do more structural damage than, by letting it set and you know, without doing anything at the present time. Or
Right.
looking at it, and, that would be my feeling is the roof is very important to me.
right, I think, and also the windows and doors, because
Yeah.
we need more doors in regard to safety. We were gonna get them this year, but we're not going to be able to, just change them out due to the way they swing. And cameras, we always need to upgrade our security cameras, so we have some that still need to be installed, but.
Question on the athletic facilities as
Yeah.
to what they are. I remember in a previous list, it's seeing about the tennis courts and the basketball court as well.
Right.
And how does that work with the town split and the rec department? And please pardon my ignorance on that, but.
No,
is-
it's something we've grappled with for years. You know, we do maintain the fields, both at the elementary school, whether it's, you know, school's in session or not. That's just something that we do. In regard to the resurfacing of the tennis courts, we've been asked for the past couple of years to put money in to
By-
help with that.
By community members
The town.
or?
By the town.
by
The town doesn't really have
So
a
is the,
budget for,
but is the town, so is the town asking the school to pay for 100%? Are they asking the school to pay for 5%? How is that all occurring? 100%? Okay. Historically, has the school always paid 100%?
Since I've been there, it was resurfaced once, and I believe there was a partnership in that.
How often does the school use the tennis court?
We do not. We use the
I
basketball.
thought that was the case.
Basketball.
But, I'm sorry, and all fiending ignorance here. The tennis courts are on school grounds?
Yes.
They belong to the school.
Yes.
Does this, sorry.
Does the basketball court abut that?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
yeah.
they're right next to each other.
And the tennis courts are behind the school? I've only ever,
On the
soccer and
side.
You need to come
softball.
visit, only.
I
but-
like, no, I was just
You
at a
face the
soccer
school to
game
the
and I
left.
like,
Yes.
Yeah.
just walk right to
The
that.
tennis courts are right on the left, and then the
School
basketball court
building.
is right next to that, and then the other
Parking lot
fields.
and then another parking lot.
Okay.
And then
Do they use the tennis courts when
Sport.
school's in session?
That's when
No.
we drive
Okay.
in. we-
Whom?
That's
Students
all-
or the town, community members?
just to the
Community
side.
members.
Yes.
They
Front
can,
of the
yes.
school right here.
When school's in session?
And the playground's back here, and
Yeah.
there's softball.
Um,
Trees are back here.
So it's all.
Yes, they're, yeah.
It's all, it's,
And
you
do
can
they
see
pay?
it when you face the school, it's to the left.
We've had several, we meet regularly with the town, the rec, and Joe and I meet with the facilities, with Rich too. And it has come down to, we maintain the fields.
Is
How
that
does-
a mandate that you received?
It's not a mandate, it's kind of, I don't. what
An
do you call
agreement?
it?
It's-
Yes.
An agreement?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
We're just-
How does liability work on that during the summer for the rec? If they're on the property and they're holding what are considered, a function of the recreation, that's a formed activity. Is there a waiver given to the school for them to be using school property, or?
There's a waiver given to the parents who sign their kids up.
Yeah, but,
I
Those
honestly
are as
don't
good as the
know.
paper they're printed on,
Yeah.
I believe.
No, yeah, they don't.
so
mean
this
anything.
seems like it needs to have a little conversation. Because I will say in Proctor, the school pays the town for use of, a town facility.
And I think it's kind of, we just take care of it because it's for the kids, and that's the way it's
Sure.
been since
Yeah,
I've been
and
there.
that's
I mean,
Great,
Morally correct.
Right.
Fiscally,
maybe
being
not.
taken advantage of.
Not if it's going to become a capital project.
So
The,
another
the thing
question.
is, if the school doesn't pay for it, the town will not. So it will deteriorate and either
Underst-
become
yeah.
a safety hazard. So that's another issue. So
So all of the fields, say the soccer fields, I know that back in, say, the late nineties, early 2000s, when, say, summer mowing was handled two separate ways. The
And it
fields,
is.
and it still is today? Okay. Another topic, the school is going to be used as a place, hosting some other services on weekends coming up.
Yep. We're working on that
Okay.
in
and
regard to what the agreement needs to
There'll
look
be a
like.
billing sort of scenario, a leasing, renting?
That is something that Judy and Lewis are working on.
Okay.
So is there not a building policy in place if someone uses your facility with the fees?
The policy
suspicion
says
that was going on.
if it's for an extended period of time, then there needs to be an agreement. That's what the policy
multiple
says.
reasons,
If it's
right.
just on a, they need to use it for 2 weeks, it's a building use form. We have a facilities use form. That needs to be
Right.
completed. This is,
And
we've been at,
what does how does that assess the fee on the
if
building
they're,
use?
there's a fee if they're, doing it for, if they're doing it for profit, and if we need to hire a custodian.
Right, so it's not costing us money.
Right.
They're paying for the custodial services.
Will there be a fee in this particular case? The
I don't
Sunday
know,
case?
because,
Yeah.
yeah, there has not been. We have not had to do anything.
What
They've
is the
taken care of
secretive
anything.
event that's taking place?
It's a church service.
At the school?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Happens lots of places now.
Does happen lots of places.
Yep. Yeah, not
It's
impromptu.
two touchy subjects
No.
together.
Right.
And it's also probably a subject on the basis of, from the tax purposes as well, I'm not sure. I don't know what those are, but I don't know.
Remember when my high school that I grew up in started doing
So
that.
we've
It's a
had-
big shock to me.
We've had legal, we've spoke to legal about this, about doing this, and I mean, this is, when we were the old SU, no.
Well, I mean, I did reach out.
We haven't gone very far with it. There hasn't been, we had one conversation. So I can check the legality of it. I
Well,
do
we-
know schools
There's public
do it.
messaging that it's official, just so everyone's aware.
In regarding.
Yeah, there is public messaging that it's a done deal. So, just FYI.
Well, I think we'll look
So my
into it
comment would
and-
I
be,
would,
wow.
the sooner the better, because they're
Yep, okay.
full steam ahead, and I don't even talk to people, and I know that from walking in and out of the school briefly for 2 minutes.
Local church, or
Yeah.
Yes.
do they do anything for the school? Throughout the
Yeah,
year?
They do things for the school, absolutely,
They
they
do
do.
stuff for the
And what
town.
happened was they outgrew their space, so they approached either of the schools to see if they could utilize it until they can add on to their,
Yeah, it's not a
Place.
permanent.
So they do stuff for the,
yes,
yeah?
Really, it's just gotta be a no risk,
right.
Well,
And while we
no
looked at
cost,
the,
no liability type situation in the.
well, and
Sounds
that's,
like trouble
Well,
to
and
me.
we
Worst case,
pulled
whatever
out
that would
the
be.
policy.
we did
but
pull out the policy, and this,
We did, and we went over it.
and the statute says, I believe, that the way it is you can't if you allow one, you can't refuse another.
Right.
But, so we're,
Yeah.
So
And that's
why
usually how
don't
it
we
works.
put it
We've
on the
done it
next
before.
agenda? We will look
Yes.
into it and
Donate the
see
tennis
what.
courts to them.
Have we done it since we've been Quarry Valley?
this summer.
We did. Interesting. Wow, I think that's interesting that those are things that this board is unaware of. I think that's
But I
big.
think just, people using your building, if they've always done it, how would they know? that
Well, I
it's
think
so?
church
You know,
is a
like-
lot different than others, but
Yeah, but if they're doing stuff for the
School.
schools, that you,
Well,
it's,
that's a pretty fine line too, I would say,
It is.
Like-
about other organizations that
Probably
do.
just some
No,
legal
that's not it.
advisement
It's gonna be right in that
to put our
section.
minds at ease.
Yeah,
Well, and
I will
just
do
so-
that.
Yeah, just so everybody's on the same page and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I will do that.
whole town knows about.
A long way from the roof.
Well, not only the people involved in that, but some of them are.
Okay, anybody else want to talk about things that are going on in their building?
Sure.
Anyway, getting back to priorities of facilities for priorities.
Christie said, this is born out of the walkthrough we did with Gail, and I know as we went through, we kind of had a long list of items, and a lot of some were minor, some were major, and I think one of the things that has popped up most recently was, the elevator at our school is, nearing the end of its life, and, I know that we have there just to replace the door protection devices in the front and the rear doors, and we actually had, I think, 8 inches of water, which we found that was actually a result of a repair we did on the roof this summer, and it just had a leak, so we were able to patch that up, so it didn't have anything to do, it wasn't structural, anything along those lines, but when we met with the elevator company, they said that, look, we're gonna have to replace the elevator soon, and so I said soon as in this year, as in, it said it could go in a month, it could go in 5 years from now, it's just one of those things, so that's why when I kind of put this out, I kind of started building out over the next 2 or 3 years that this could happen. And obviously, you prioritize because that is a big ticket item, and there are a lot of little things that can kind of go to the wayside as well, like, 3 years out, replace the vinyl floor in the cafeteria. Right now, it's more of a cosmetic, but there are parts that are starting to peel up in certain places, so it does become a safety hazard for some of our kids, but there are little things that we can do to hold off on that. So obviously, it's a work in progress, and I know with cost, it is difficult, obviously, to sometimes get costs for, from contractors, because they just like coming out, just give us bids after bids, just for the sake of just, yeah, exactly, exploratory purposes. It's kind of, are we gonna do something with the bid? So I know Joe Piontek, our Director of Facilities, who has been actively looking at bringing in people to provide more of like a set cost, but they also want to know about timeline. So as we all know that contractors at a premium too. So we might be scheduling 6 months, 7 months out as well. So it's just, but like I said, so it is very loose right now. But like I said, as the year goes on, things will get firmed up. I know that one of the things that we had a guy come in and look at our boiler, said we need to replace the whole boiler. It's like, why? Well, he's like, well, you could use a new one. Well, that technically doesn't go onto our budget just because, it's not necessarily a need right now. That's a want. Sure, I think we'd all love to have a new boiler, but we can't afford that. So we're trying to backpedal off some of those items that were on our original list.
I don't know if any of the schools ever had, or any of the former districts ever had this, but some districts will create capital funds.
Yes, we did.
The
We did,
boiler fund, this, that, the other thing. That might be something worth considering. And, you can do it through an article, like, would you place X amount of dollars?
We created the fund, we've never put funds in it.
Yeah,
So we asked the question, the first year we were formed, we created the fund, but
Right.
we've never put,
but what I'm
Funds,
saying is
yeah.
sometimes I've seen districts where they'll actually do it as a separate article on the ballot.
right,
And say, would you approve, $50,000 into a roof fund or a boiler fund, and then consistently try to put it in every year, or if you have a fund balance at the end of the year, try to designate those funds into a capital fund, because with, how many schools do we have? 7, 8?
fine.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm doing
just
the- yeah,
us.
just you, sorry.
We can't
yeah.
take care of Well Springs.
But that's it, that, if you do it and systematically over time,
That
then
was-
when you really do need a roof, the funds will be available, and it won't be like, oh, no, we have to get a bond, or we have to get this. It's
Well, I
just
guess-
a consideration.
Sure.
Created the space, right? So now,
Right.
this year, I think the plan was then to
To ask to put in.
ask to put in.
Yeah,
and
sure.
that's part of
And
this
think about what
process.
buckets you want, like, I was just doodling, I was writing roof, boiler, a sidewalk fund, because you're looking at a sidewalk, and,
Well, I think having to be a capital improvement fund, we don't have to designate, we can just
Right.
ask to put in
Yep.
X amount.
The roof goes, but if we
You can
designate
use
it
it.
as sidewalks, then we can't use the roof.
That's right.
that's true.
That's
especially
why
if
we
the
don't want
voters
to
approved it.
encumber ourselves. So I guess the biggest question is, on this list that was put together, Does any building administrator anticipate incorporating any of these items into the upcoming budget? Jay?
Yes, I do. So ours is not in a priority.
Okay.
I would like to put one of these, one of the larger ticket items, either the cafeteria floor, the library, asbestos removal and new flooring, one of those in for this year. And the caveat, and I spoke to it at the last board meeting, is the sewer line replacement where I'm still waiting on bids. That would supersede everything else. And so that's with the engineers right now.
I gotta tell you, we redid the floor in the cafeteria 9 years ago,
It's not held up very well.
okay?
Can we do something different? Instead of
There's a number
tile,
of products that we could try.
Tile doesn't seem to be a thing to put in schools.
Using it as a gym and as a cafeteria, possibly some sort of rubberized system that would give and be able to move with the floor might be the way to go, but, like I said, right now, the sewer line is the big elephant in the room that I want to be able to come to the board with.
Because importantly, it's tile and it's a gym and it's a cafeteria and it's held up probably since the day it was built in reality, and it's in
1968.
Ours has,
incredibly good shape, but it might be the subfloor that's.
yeah, I was gonna say, ours has a basement underneath.
Okay.
There are locker rooms, the furnace room, and a coaches and maintenance area. And it's not on a concrete slab, so that in itself is gonna, you can feel the floor when you're on it.
Moving up and down.
Yeah.
We put another layer of plywood down over it, screwed it down really well, and then put the tile back down over it probably 9 years ago, because of that very same thing.
Yeah. It's just, again, it's got a basement, so. But that's it for West Rutland.
Okay. And does anyone else anticipate one of these being in the budget?
We typically put in things like this every year. Except for the field.
Okay.
Resurfacing of the court.
Yeah, so,
So 25,000 a year for the roof is a typical number, is that, or did I misunderstand?
Well, I don't know why this looks like this, because I think we had when it was done the last time, it was 5, 5, 5.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the way it was, so I'm not exactly sure what happened with this here.
It's the same elevator company?
do we all use the same elevator? I think we use the same company to inspect, probably. Do we all use the one out of New Hampshire? Bay State?
Basically.
Yes.
Yeah, usually it's been Bay State.
Yep,
They check it.
Right?
yep. Okay. Are there any other questions about that? Technology. Last time we met, there were some technology hiccups. Have we smoothed those out like butter?
We have that next week.
You have? Okay.
Depends on what you call butter, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like
Melting nicely on my toast. No.
Things are running more smoothly now than they were at the beginning of the year, yes.
Okay, and is the class that we have between here and West Rutland, that's up and with no hiccups and all the
We still have occasional.
technology we need is?
The issue we're still working with is just occasional drops and the wireless and network, and I think that all schools experience that, just random drops. And I think where our concern is, as we do like map testing or other sorts of, computerized assessment is in the middle of this, if, there's an issue or a drop, then what does that do to the testing environment? So,
Right,
so I know that they're aware of it. They're
Yeah, we get
constantly
notifications
addressing
on
it,
it,
trying to figure
yeah.
out what the
Issues
issues really are. But I think that's the biggest issue that we're all experiencing, just the random drops throughout the day.
okay.
For that interactive class, I'm gonna try to run an Ethernet cable in there to see, because it was clearly the wireless, because the rest of the building was still up and running. But if we can have a hard wire connection to the teacher's computer, I think that will really help
Okay,
Al Grigorich has been really helpful, as have the tech guys, to try to
Yeah.
come up with some microphones and trying to aid in some real help for this. But, yeah, right now, there's an enormous amount of usage on the system.
Right.
With all of the testing, and then throw in, as Chris said, the interactive, that's a lot of points being used.
right.
So that, we're gonna try an Ethernet cable in the next couple of days, see if that'll help.
Okay. I think if we can continue to have monthly updates about that, that's helpful, so
And I've
we
noticed
stay in
their
the loop.
web designer person, Shannon is fantastic. She's very
Very
responsive,
responsive, yes.
real responsive. I mean, my website is more up to date now than it ever has been.
Okay,
She's been great.
great. Good
That
deal.
is fantastic.
All right. New business. So we have a resignation from Pulteney. We can't keep a person in Pulteney, does it seem like? It's like the revolving door here. So unfortunately, Linda Smith submitted her resignation. We'll definitely miss her and her insight and help, and her eagerness to serve this board. So, a motion
Did
to,
she say why she was leaving?
she has some,
Personal
personal reasons, family, out of state, so that she's kind of
Obligations.
been dealing with and trying to juggle, and just felt like that she couldn't. So she, needed to give all of her attention to that, so. So a motion to accept her resignation would be in place. So Art makes the motion to accept Linda's resignation. Second,
I will second it with much regret.
I will concur. Seconded by Kristen Ross. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So consequently, we need to elect a clerk from Pulteney because Linda was the clerk, and we have elected someone from each school. So nominations would be in order for the clerk. And I'll just say, to make you all,
No.
I know
I'm
you're
never
all
on time.
jumping, but let me just say, you're not gonna get to take the minutes. We're gonna have Shauna come and take
Yeah.
minutes. So, and I know you're all just like, oh. So it's really,
We already talking about
So
who's
we-
gonna represent ourselves on the
well, that'll be the next,
next.
but,
yeah.
so the clerk is really just,
Go there first, actually?
in namesake only. It's just for notoriety.
Right.
And once in a while, you get to sign
I think
things.
that should go to Kristen. She's fine.
All right.
She's the most senior member.
So Kristen W. makes a motion to nominate Kristen R.
I would be happy to second that motion.
I'm sure
Okay.
you would.
I think it should all be Pulteney. Seconded by Seth. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Now the fun. Who wants to go to the SU board? And that,
Well,
and so I'm gonna say
we
this
discussed.
about the SU board, because we're coming into budgets, I think you just need to stop and think, there needs to be a level of consistency in talking about the budget. It's not viable to have someone go in October, someone to go in November, someone go in December. It really creates a lot of angst at that board, and you always kind of feel like you're running uphill trying to put your pants on. So I think
I
it's
like
better.
that one.
yeah.
That's a good one.
No, we kind of thought about that already, and
So who would that?
Who do you know?
More or less,
Yep. And that's just between the three of you. We
Yeah,
don't have
we're
to.
leaning towards me.
yeah.
Okay.
We're
However-
definitely leaning hard towards
Yeah,
that.
we're leaning hard in my direction. I still have the
hard
same concerns about some availability. I do have mandatory travel requirements from time
Sure.
to time that I do not have total discretion over.
Sure.
As well as the single parent
Right.
part. So typically that part should be manageable.
Can we do this? Can we allow the three of you to discuss? I mean, we have a board SU meeting at the end of the month, but allow the three of you to kind of go back, talk.
I don't know if we need to.
Okay,
think we just
I
need
was gonna
to-
give you the option.
So
There's
I
gotta
had
be-
suggested
Yeah.
if he's the most interested, I mean, I don't mind going, it's just of my weird issue this year.
And the
with
meetings
my
are always here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that, if he knows enough in advance that he can tell me I will be a consistent alternate, and if I
Okay.
can come, I will.
Okay.
I had volunteered to come this month
Yep.
anyway. Just because I already have a sitter that day, and she could just stay, this is next week already.
And
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, and we will not be starting budgets this month, so.
So we hadn't officially decided that yet, based on Seth's.
So it's
schedule, but
on
I
a-
already have a sitter planned,
It's
so she
always
can
on the
just stay longer.
Wednesday after.
It's the fourth Wednesday of the
Yeah.
month.
You'll do it.
I can do it for
With-
this month, and
With
then.
Thanksgiving and Christmas, we're gonna probably have to do the third. Cause
Yeah.
we could meet on,
October's looking
you know,
okay,
the
at
night
least I'm in
before
town.
Thanksgiving, or
But no one's gonna be here, so.
I think one of them is New Year's Eve or something.
Right.
That was a good one. So day before Thanksgiving and,
Okay.
right?
No, it'd probably be the week before.
It'll probably be the week before.
I already am in Mexico for that one,
that
but the
sounds
next two,
That doesn't sound so awful.
Yeah.
it's good food. But so next week and the following month, I should be available.
Okay.
November will be an issue.
Okay.
If it's on the 20th.
What's
If it was made for the 13th,
December.
And so that'll probably be decided at the
Christmas
next.
Day.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought so. I knew
So
there
the
was a-
next
I'll be available.
meeting, so the next meeting will probably be, deciding those 2 months
Yeah.
would be my guess. So,
So you can go this next one, a week from,
I have to verify with
Wednesday.
with
right.
a babysitter myself, but probably okay.
Okay, just let me
Okay.
know.
I
and
can
then
do that immediately.
okay, sounds good. All right,
Figure it out if
moving on.
something happens. And
So job descriptions were in your packet. If there's no, debate, if we could just take them and, there were some things that I thought about, but because it was online, I couldn't make changes and I didn't print it out. So could we put this on for next
Can we
month as
do-
an action item?
And maybe people get,
What? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I asked her about a Polteny member, because they're losing one.
Yeah,
I thought that was gonna be her over there. I guess I don't know who's in the corner.
that's your member,
that's
Oh,
Hey,
nice.
Elizabeth. That's
That's yours,
I-
yeah.
Sarah.
Susan.
Yeah, Sarah.
Sarah gets
Yeah.
it.
We need our
How you
name
doing?
tags back.
Yeah, right?
Okay, I'm sorry.
We've decided to have the same name for all the members, so it's much easier.
That's right, that's fine.
we need Clarence here.
Kristen it is.
Alright.
She was here.
So, I apologize. Sarah is joining us for the first meeting. Hi. And Sarah is
I would
filling in
get
for
name
West,
tags.
is the new West Rutland member replacing Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you.
Because that's why I was like, wait, you're supposed to know that.
Nobody knows.
I asked
She
who
was
was on my
West Rutland.
team. I was like, I don't know. West Rutland crew.
You guys
You
appointed
just gotta
her at the
rattle the
last
cage a
meeting.
little bit.
Yeah, we didn't ever meet her though.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The one where we
I
didn't have
thought
a
you all
quorum.
knew her,
Yes,
that's
yeah.
why.
But we also have to
July
recruit
meeting.
another
Yeah.
poll.
And no one was there.
Nobody. Nope.
So with that, if everyone's okay, we'll take the, job descriptions, put them on for the next meeting for action for both of them. And so if you have any changes or anything like that, bring those, or you can even send them
To me.
to Judy, and that way, that, we could come with that version also,
Kind of
which
like a
would be the.
policy, like a second.
Right, okay, great. Extracurricular stipend request, West Rutland.
Take it away.
Okay. So, obviously with new leadership, new eyes, and new questions come up. So as I was going through extracurriculars with my assistant principal, Mr. Harrington, I said, we have a fencing club, we have a golf club, school newspaper, drama coach, and the answer was no, and yet there's expenditures for these in the budget. And what I did notice was that my my advisors for the freshman, sophomore, and junior class were not stipended. And in fact, those folks, what has been past practice is for the same person would follow them through freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, and then get paid at the end of their senior year. I said, well, is there any way that we could look at this again? I know that there is a committee, in fact, I think it was on the board agenda, that was something that will be looked at as a greater school district look at extracurriculars. But I thought, in the meantime, for this year, could I take what had been allotted, which was $44.50, and take $2,400 of that, give that to my freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior class advisors, and save the district $2,250 in doing so, because it was money that was already earmarked, and I don't need it. And I would like to, those folks that are the class advisors actually do a lot of work throughout the year. It's not a one-shot deal, especially the senior class. But there's an enormous amount of fundraising and coordination that goes into effect starting right when they're freshmen. So I thought it would be a real nice thing to do, and an appropriate thing to do for their time and dedication to the school. So this is sitting in the, running the concession stand at games. They run fundraisers throughout the year, and do meetings throughout the year to organize the students. So it is actually not a lot of money that I'm asking for, and it's money that was already earmarked, and I would just like to reallocate it and give the district back $2,250. Thought that could be a win-win for everybody. And it would be a 1 year, because as the district looks at this, that could change.
1 year, yes and no, because the union has not allowed us to take things out of the extracurricular or the co-curricular, because it's attached to the contract, which is why we're doing the committee this year as part of the outcome of the contract. We've been hesitant about putting new things in, because once they're in, you can't get them out, has been where we have been.
So would this have just been part of our surplus last year if it wasn't used from last?
I'm not sure, was it actually budgeted in your budget?
For this year, yes, it was.
Because historically in Proctor, if we don't have something, we don't include those funds in that line item. We've taken them out, so that's unfortunate that that wasn't done last year.
But do you know early enough? Right, so if kids suddenly decided, 5 kids say, I want a fence tomorrow.
Right.
Are you in a position to say, sorry, kids, you're too late? Or is it, yeah, let's see if we can kick this up and find a coach and
Well,
see how
you
things go?
can't, as long as it's in here, you can't say no, but, I mean, a lot of things, just like at Proctor, we haven't had them for a number of years, and you kind of have an idea ahead of time if that interest is coming up through the pipe. I mean, we, as a board, cannot take these out of the co-curricular agreement as it stands now. It is attached to the contract.
Right.
And that is part of what this committee is going to do in setting and meeting with the teacher, however that committee is formed. That was part of the agreement of the contract we just negotiated.
But that's not really the question, right?
Well, it is, because he's asking, well, he's saying, can we take those out because they don't exist?
Not take those out,
Reallocate the
reallocate the
funds.
money.
The line item is there with 0.
Right, but, okay.
Is that the same thing as taking them out? I don't know, I'm asking.
We
bottom-
haven't offered fencing for 6 years.
But the bottom line is, if it was there, that person would be getting $600.
Right.
Right?
But we
And
don't,
actually, regardless of whether that's in the budget.
we didn't have the numbers, so.
Well, the senior class advisor in West Rutland actually is on the co-curricular schedule for $600.
Do other schools have these allocated to like the freshman, sophomore?
Every schedule for each school is
Two
different,
line items.
which is why we're doing the committee, to try to have some
Evaluate.
uniformity, because in West Rutland and Pulteney, they adjust the schedule based on time in. So they do 0 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 8, 10 plus. In Proctor, there's a flat stipend. It doesn't make any difference if you've done it 2 years, your first year, or 10 years, that's the stipend.
So going into next year, when we all meet about it, if that's the case at different schools, then West Rutland would get the benefit of like whatever the decision is made for Quarry Valley.
So the
terms of
committee
those
is gonna meet, and we have to have a decision by December as part of the negotiations. And it depends on what the committee decides, what the board accepts, the outcome from that, where the schedule goes.
But there'd be one schedule instead of different schools having different schedules.
That hasn't been determined. That's part of what the committee is determining. So,
So it could be that they're different, it may be that they're not different.
true. I mean, that's the
don't know.
essence.
Okay.
That,
Charge to the
Right.
committee is to make a recommendation to the
Right.
board, which
So-
the board, if they accept it, it goes in the contract, and if they decide they don't want it, it does not go into the contract.
so the goal has been for a number of years, and I don't think this is any tell out of, that the board has wanted to take it out of the contract so that you had that flexibility to take things out and put things in. And that's been one of the reasons that we have not included certain things, because once they're in there, there they lie. You can never take them out again. The board is handcuffed. I mean, you try to do what's right and put things in, but then you can't take them out, you know, so, I don't know, the board's,
I just don't think it's that big a deal right now, to be honest with you, my feeling. I'm more inclined to go with the recommendation of our principal on this one, and let the chips fall where they may, because there's not a great deal of money involved in it, and it would clean it up, you know? It would allocate the funds where they should be and put this other stuff to sleep, because we haven't had it for a long time. So, to me, it's a way to clean that up, and I'm not worried about the other stuff at this point. That's my feeling on it. So that's the way I'm going.
Is it possible to leave, so if 2,400 is going to the new proposed listed here, could the remainder still be left in those line items since they're already there, and it would just be?
I can't imagine why we would even keep any money designated for fencing when we haven't had it for at least 5 or 6 years.
Well, I was just thinking if it's a contract issue, then,
Then you're gonna,
Well, if it's in the budget now, you could just leave that 2250
Wipe it out for next
where it
year.
is, and then, you know, it'll end up being a surplus at the end of the year if it doesn't have to go to something else. But that way,
That's
you-
exactly what,
That's what
in
you
my
were thinking?
understanding, it would be in my past experience.
well, both of your senior class advisors are already on the schedule.
Yes, they are. That's true, actually, so that would be an error on my part. Thank you for pointing that out.
so you're really talking about 20,
I'm talking even less than that,
$1,200.
about 1,200, yeah.
yeah.
That's exactly. You're right, thank you for pointing that out.
To oversimplify, is the question simply, can $400 be allocated to freshman, sophomore, junior class advisors? End of request, actually?
That's the decision
I don't see what
of the board.
would be a problem.
I don't either. You demonstrated the money's there. It's there. You need to hear, but it's available.
It's not like we're allocating a $10,000 bill to something.
Yeah. I asked the question, why is this still in there? And I think it's just the eyes haven't really looked at it. So with myself coming in, I'm really critically taking a look at where are our expenditures. So are they
No.
current or are they not?
The board has critically looked at the co-curricular schedule every negotiation cycle, and it has been a huge component of negotiation. So the fact that we are at the level we're at now to have a committee, I would say, Jim was on the negotiating team, that is a big step. So, it's not that we haven't, when we were the old SU, our CSU wanted to take things out. It was that you couldn't, so. What is the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion to support the recommendation of the principal.
Second.
So Jim makes a motion to allocate $1,200, $400 for freshmen, $400 for sophomore, $400 for junior class advisors. And the motion is seconded by Tom. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
The other request is from Pulteney.
I think we're going to need to table that
Okay.
because Joe didn't leave me with anything.
Okay.
And I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, great. Appoint the extracurricular study committee. How appropriate.
Maybe we should have.
Done it together.
Done that before. I think the way the committee looks now is it would be, Joe Harrington, Joe DeBonis, Jake, myself, and then the teachers will appoint their representative. And then in December, we will bring a recommendation back to the board. And I guess it would be nice if we had it earlier, so people can review it, but the essence is, we'll bring it back, the board will review it, you'll either accept it or not accept it, and it'll go in the contract, or it'll be out of the contract as we start negotiating again. So, all right. School snapshot, Lisa, and we left the hot seat right there for you.
Great. Let's see. I'm actually going to stand up from it though so that I can give you some materials.
You want me to pass them out, Lisa?
Okay. Oh, it looks worse than it is.
I'm gonna pass this around to Shauna.
Did Kristen sign it?
Yeah, yeah,
Hold it down that way.
yep.
It's
Sign
going
it
to
again?
Shauna.
No,
Don't sign it twice.
no, I won't.
Be a cheater.
I won't.
Okay.
That'll be
leave it up
orange,
to
I
you.
get two
I was
checks.
watching.
So thank you for having me here. What you have in front of you is an overview of a new report card tool that the Agency of Education has released, which they are calling the Annual Snapshot. This is replacing the school report cards that schools and districts used to create every year to report out on their own progress and their assessment scores. You may remember those. And the state is taking over that function for a few reasons. One, because through technology, a lot of our systems are now more centralized, so they have a lot of the information already. Two, they're trying to take the burden off of schools for having to do yet another report that gets released. And then the third is that they're required to capture a lot of this data for the federal funding that they're receiving. And so this is a way that they can demonstrate that they're meeting the data requirements set by the federal government. So there's a number of purposes of why they set up this tool, and that's just sort of an overview. The components of it are on the front page of this document. there are 5 main areas that the state will be reporting out. The first is academic proficiency, and then under that you can see all of the areas that eventually they will report out on for academic proficiency. The next is personalization, and again, what they will report out underneath that. The third is high quality staffing, the fourth, safe and healthy schools, and the fifth is investment priorities. So these should sound very familiar to you because they're also based on the educational quality standards that the state has identified for all of our schools and holds us accountable for now through this process, but also through the integrated field review, which our schools participated in last year for the first time, and that's when teams come out to the schools to visit us, look at a lot of our documentation, and also give us feedback on the educational quality standards. So this work aligns with those as well, and which is great for the schools because we have one set of standards that we're working on in a variety of different ways, and then a few different ways to look at how we're doing in meeting those standards. There's the second page gives you just a little more detail about each of those snapshot areas. And the third page gives you the metrics for that. So how are they scoring our schools? And they have this really interesting little chart in there which has some arrows pointing in different directions. And that is the visual symbol that they're using. So there's not like a score or a percentile. They're using these levels for current performance. So that's how are our schools doing currently. And for the data that I'll share tonight, when they say current, they're talking about the 17-18 school year, which is not current to us. We're already looking at the 18-19 data and using that to inform our school plans. But the state is doing a multi-year rollout of this system. So they had to start somewhere. That's where they started. That's what they mean by current performance. And then your performance change. And that is how the performance of your students changes over time on different measures. And I'll share a detail of one of those in just a few minutes. There's also an equity index. And what equity means in Vermont, how they're looking at equity right now. And historically, you may have heard this data as you're disaggregating by students who receive free and reduced lunch, or students who are served with an individual education plan, different groups of students that we might disaggregate by in their demographics to show, are we doing as good a job with those groups of students as we are with all of our students? The challenge that have faced most of our schools in Vermont is that many of our subgroups are very small. And that has prevented us from being able to report out on them in a transparent way in the past. The state set N at 11 and said if you have less than 11 students are in a certain category, we really can't share out data about them because people could sit down and pretty much figure out which kid we're talking about in some of our small towns. And so they've really tried to protect that confidentiality. What this report does, which is brand new for the state of Vermont, is it identifies a group of people and it calls them historically underserved. And what that means is all of those groups that we usually can't look at information about separately, the state is grouping them together to try to give us enough students in that category that we can start having real conversations about, are there differences between the performance of students in those categories and the rest of our student population. So it's an interesting new category. Vermont kind of made it up, and it'll be interesting to see over the next few years how that category shakes out and if that data is in fact helpful to us and helps us to be more transparent in the way that they hope it will be. So when they're talking about current equity index and equity index change, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the performance of students in those historically underserved groups versus the performance of our schools as a whole, and what the performance is, and then whether or not it's changing over time. And they use these little arrows and these little circles to show that. So performance, the more colored in the circle is, the better. We want circles that are mostly colored in or all colored in. And then for change, obviously we want arrows that are pointing up in some way. So that's what we want to see.
So I have a question really quickly about the equity index. So since they're grouping other categories together, could that mean that one student is counted in more than one way in that?
You know, that is a wonderful question, and I would have to go back to the state report to find out that information.
I didn't know if you.
Um,
Seems like someone could be
You could be both,
in
yes.
a couple of those
absolutely.
categories and then
Right, you know, your
counted.
score may count more than one time. Jay, would you write down that question for me, please? That's a great question, and I want to make sure I have an accurate answer.
You would think they would come up with a way so that wouldn't
Wouldn't
happen
affect, yeah.
if scoring something. But if it's an index, it doesn't always work like a straight up score, so, okay.
Great question. The next slide goes over what the snapshot is designed to do. So this is how the state intended for us to use it. Really what they want us to do with this information is they want us to drive our school continuous improvement plans. And that's the vehicle that they have for making schools better. Every year our schools work really hard, our principals work with our teachers, they look at the data, they see how the kids are performing, and they develop a continuous improvement plan that articulates the goals that they're working toward and the strategies that they're going to use to accomplish that. They reflect on it, they do a needs assessment, and that's an iterative process. So the state really would like us to make sure that we're using this information to inform our school continuous improvement plans. It's also supposed to reflect the educational quality standards, and it's supposed to provide a holistic view of school systems. The data that I have available to share with you tonight is not a holistic view of school systems. Because as I said, the state is doing a rollout over time, so they've only released a small portion of the data at this point, but in future iterations over the next year and a half, we should eventually get to the whole depth and breadth of data that will give us a much more holistic, comprehensive view of our schools, and really show off some of the amazing things that they're doing, we think, in great ways. The next slide is about what the snapshot is not designed to do. This was really emphasized in the trainings from the state that we went through, and in fact we've had folks from the state who've come down to meet with our schools at this point, and they really emphasize this as well, that this tool is not designed to rank schools and compare them to each other. It's not designed for shame or blame. It's not trying to define accountability as only a test score. That's not something that the state of Vermont believes in or subscribes to, although it is, of course, the first thing required for federal funding, thus the marriage of these two systems. And they also say this is not designed to fully represent a school system and all of the hard work and things that are going on there. This is just a snapshot, which is why they call it that snapshot. You get a picture of a moment in time and a bit of information that you need to use to contextualize with everything else that you know about the schools. The next 2 pages, just for your information, are that calendar of how they're going to roll this out over time so that you can see how the different measures will eventually appear on this tool. And I promised that I would talk about what that growth score means and how it is calculated. So the state in 2015 submitted a plan under the Every Student Succeeds Act that has some really complicated statistical formulas that they use to measure and weigh all of these things and to try and come up with scores for our schools. I thought this visual was one of the easiest ways that I've seen that they've been trying to explain how that is. So when you look at your performance growth score, your schools are always talking about growth. The way that growth is measured is broken up into 2 essential elements. Half of your growth score is based on how the kids did from 16-17 to 17-18 on SBAC. So 50% of the score is that calculation in terms of growth. The other 50% is based on a scale. So say that this top orange triangle, this point right here, is a girl named Sally. And when Sally's in 3rd grade, this is her scaled score on SBAC. They then compare Sally to every other kid in the state of Vermont who got the same scaled score as her. They look at those kids over a 3-year period of time, and they ask the question, how did Sally perform compared to all the kids who got the same score as her 3 years ago? Did she do better than them? Did she do worse with them? And they have a formula for computing Sally's growth over that 3 period of time. And then they do the same thing for Jimmy. And this is Jimmy's scaled score, and they look at Jimmy and the scaled scores of all the kids that are the same score as Jimmy, and they look at them over 3 years, and did Jimmy do better or worse than all of the kids who had the same score as him 3 years ago. They do that for every kid in our building that's been in our building consistently for that 3-year period of time, and then they average them all together and that's the other 50% of the growth score. So a little bit complicated, not an easy formula, but
I just wanna break this down, cause I will not remember that. The other 50% is based on the average.
so 50% is based on the growth from 16-17 to 17-18.
Right, got that.
And then the other 50% is based on an average with a formula that they use
Okay.
to calculate how each of those students over the 3-year period of time did compared to their peers
Okay.
who had the same scaled score 3 years ago. Thanks again to the state for these simple formulas that are so easy. Thank you for tolerating my explanation of it. I apologize in advance.
No, that's okay. It's
Yeah.
good. I just
So,
need to hear it again, that's
A
all.
little bit complicated, but again, the general sense is they're looking at our kids over time. How are they moving in some of these metrics?
And so then they're looking at our kids in our building.
Mhm.
Are they then looking at our kids in our building against the other buildings, or only at our kids in our building?
Only our kids in our building. That 50%
Yeah.
is all kids across the state of Vermont.
Okay, all right.
Yep, but the other 50% is
It's
just our kids in our building.
Okay.
Yep, great question also. So Vermont has used the initial scores that they have available in the snapshot right now to identify schools that they're going to provide additional supports to in terms of helping them to achieve the goals in their continuous improvement plan. And our supervisory union has several. So both Proctor Elementary and Proctor High School have been designated as schools that will benefit from comprehensive supports. And the state identified those. To qualify, your school had to be a Title I school. They didn't look at any schools that did not have a Title I school-wide program. And then they also looked at the school's performance against similar schools across the state. And they identified some schools that they thought would benefit from these supports. And this chart just gives you an overview of how they selected those schools. So both our elementary school and our high school in Proctor are in that group. What that means is outlined on the next few pages. But predominantly, what it means is that our schools are going to receive extra supports, which is a fabulous opportunity for us to take a look at those continuous improvement plans, identify things that we could use some additional funding for, which is going to be provided to the Proctor schools through this process, and make sure that we're using that funding to leverage some of the high activities that we think are going to make a big difference for kids in those buildings. So we're really excited about that opportunity. Christy and Chris have been working really hard with their teams of diving into their data, making sure that they really understand where the needs are for their students, and figuring out the resources that they can deploy to really target the specific areas where they want to move student growth and learning over the next 3 years. It's a 3-year designation, so that means 3 years of funding to support their work, which is just a great opportunity for our schools.
And what do we think happens after 3 years?
So they've laid out a long-term plan. So basically after 3 years, if you are still within the same designation framework, you get another 3 years. They don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet, but they will give you another 3 years with some additional monitoring and support from the state. And then after that, they don't really know what happens. There's not really a clearly articulated process from that point forward. The other category of schools that the
And
state-
that was covered on page 2 when we're not comparing and shaming.
Right. We're not comparing.
Okay.
We're not comparing and shaming.
Okay.
We
Just
have
wanted to make
opportunities,
sure.
great opportunities and support and resources, and we love support and resources in schools. If you can support some of the things that we want to accomplish, we're all about that, because we already have a dream wish list of things that we would do if time and money were no object. So when you give us a situation where time and money is less of an object, we're ready to take right advantage of that. And they've been
Lisa, do
working
you want to
hard on
share
that.
how much money they're?
Yes, I was gonna look up those numbers right before I came,
It's about 220,000 between each school.
between the
each
two
year.
schools, yeah.
There's your sidewalk fund.
That's
Yes.
right.
If only we could use it to get them out, that would be
That'll be there in
wonderful.
7
That's
years.
right.
The project won't be.
That's right. So the funds can be spent very similarly to how your Title I, Title II, and Title IV funds are currently being spent. So the types of investments that we're asking the federal government for in terms of professional development for our teachers, instructional supports for students. You know, that's the kind of thing that we can use this funding to support. In addition to the funding, there's also technical support available for the schools who have been identified in comprehensive supports, as well as the schools that have been identified as schools who are working toward equity. And those schools, there are 173 of them in the state, so we have really good company. And the state also said that if the N, they set the N at 25 for this data, and if the N had been smaller, they believe that pretty much every school in the state of Vermont would qualify under this designation. But because your N has to be at least 25, it was only our larger schools that were able to qualify under equity supports. And for those, we have 2 in this SU, Holton Elementary School and West Rutland School are the 2 who qualify for equity supports. Unfortunately, an equity support designation with 173 schools statewide does not equal any funding. However, it does involved quick access to technical support, and that means that we have a representative from the Agency of Education who's required to take my phone call every time I call and call me back very quickly. And if we have something that a school needs in terms of training, so if they have, the state has experts in multi-tier systems of support who are running trainings all over the state, and if one of our equity schools or comprehensive support schools wants that trainer to come here and do training for our staff, then we get bumped to the top of the list as priorities to access those resources. There was one who was, we were talking about, there was one group, one already that we had started to line up for one of the schools, because it really met with a goal in their continuous improvement plan, was something they were working on, and the state has a group of people that can come down and do training in that area. We're like, free training, absolutely, come on down, we would love to have you. So there are some additional resources and supports available there, not financial, but from a technical assistance standpoint. So that is just an overview. I also, you have a user guide. So all of this information that I'm giving you tonight is available publicly on the State Annual Snapshot website. And this is the user guide for that website. So it literally walks you through, click by click, you know, how do I find the school, how do I look at the report, how do I dive down into the report to see more of a detail level, what information is available to me. And one of the things that I think is the most useful from this guide is toward the back. There's a list of sets of questions. And this, I think, is particularly helpful when, for groups looking at data who don't necessarily always look at data. You know, I'm a parent. What should I be asking my school principal? I'm a teacher. What should I ask my principal? I'm a student. What should I ask my principal? I'm a board member. I thought you guys would like this one. What should I ask my superintendent? And there are just some sample questions that the state offers as, you know, as you're looking at this data, these are some things that you might want to think about or might want to have some further conversation with in another time about our schools. So just a handy resource for you there. And then I have a lot of data. And I hated to kill so many trees, but I also wanted to acknowledge that this system is kind of, if you're not used to navigating data systems, it can be really clunky to get on and get what you want. So I wanted to make sure that you had information on all of the schools in your supervisory union to the level that it's available, and could really take a look at where everyone is. And I'm gonna go through one of these packets with you so that you can see what each of the reports are, and then I will just leave you with the rest of them, and you can revisit at any point in time, obviously, any of these conversations. Oh yeah, there's so many schools in our supervisory.
And wait, there's more.
And wait, there's more.
Oh, I did that wrong.
If you buy this, you can also have the microfiber cloth.
Thank you.
That big fat piece of paper there.
No, I'm.
Might not be the word.
Thanks, Jay.
Here's Proctor.
So you should wind up with 5 packets total, one for each of the schools.
Oh, one for each of the schools, sorry.
One for each of the schools.
Everybody has those.
I thought they
And
were
their
all together.
names are right on the front. cover, so you can see.
Yes. Got it.
me.
So you have two
Okay,
different
Proctor
ones.
Elementary,
Okay.
we've
Sorry,
got.
I thought I had extra. I only have two, so they're,
We got
they're
two
working
more
their way
coming.
around.
Does everybody have a Proctor Elementary?
No.
No.
No,
All right, pass it that way.
Proctor High School.
Lisa, while those are going on, can I just ask you about these slides that you show here? Are these specific to what, the information you were saying, like this was the, is this specific to our schools that qualify for this, or is this a just sample?
Generic sample
Got it,
from the
okay.
state.
I didn't, okay, got it.
You got a wood stove, Art?
yep.
Attaboy.
Okay.
Here's Proctor Elementary. And she needs a,
So since Joe DeBonis isn't here, we should start with his data.
We'll put it with Thomas over there.
I'll give you a
Got a
high
file.
school.
okay.
Can I just ask one question before you start? Just looking at
There
the
it
front
is.
pages.
Yes.
Or the,
We stop.
assessments based from these, that when you talked about the Proctor schools that are receiving supports because of a concern, are they based from these papers that we're looking at?
Yes.
But just the academic
Yep,
proficiency.
just academic proficiency. And again,
That's SBAC
eventually,
scores.
it's all SBAC right now. It is the
Okay.
only metric that is in this system right
Which
now is
is
A
SBAC.
very small.
Define accountability
Which
as
is a
test
very
scores,
small
which it's not
sample.
intended to
If-
do.
So academic
eventually-
proficiency in Proctor says we're excelling.
Yes, it does. Isn't that wonderful? That's wonderful. Yes.
Sorry, Rick.
This is the criteria.
Working
We'll
already.
eventually roll
I'm taking the
out
money, that's all.
That's right,
You're
we're gonna
what?
take the
I'm
money and
taking the
run.
money, they're giving me money, that's
money in there.
Okay, I just want to make sure after the second page, we weren't, shaming or putting schools out for.
Or using one measure as.
Or using
Define
one
accountability.
measure, evaluate schools,
Okay, just,
ranking, if we wanna do any of those things.
okay. Want to make sure I can follow the arrows.
You got it, follow the arrow. So your front page again, those are all the buckets that will eventually be filled in. Then there's your current performance, your performance change, your current equity index, and your change. And a lot of these still say NA or not measured yet, because again, it's a really new tool. Your second page is a specific overview of academic proficiency, since that's the only data currently available. And then that breaks it down for that school as a whole in each of the major content areas, English, math, science, and phys ed, which we don't have scores for the most part yet, but will, because there's a measure coming through. After that is an overview for English language arts. It gives you the whole school's performance in English language arts by those same metrics and same categories. And then I broke it down by grade level. These are, again, all available online for you if you choose to go look at them in more depth. And then for each grade level in the school, there's an overview of their English language arts page.
Can I just ask a question on page 2 of 2? And I know I probably just don't
They're all,
understand.
they keep repeating 2 of 2, but
The
is
English language,
arts,
but,
the back side of the overview page.
right, on Proctor High School. And it says the graduation rate is currently exceeding,
Mhm.
and then the change is it's not improving.
Yes. So, I'm sure you talked about this with some of your previous data. Some of our cohorts are really small. So the change from one year to the next, even one student can make a difference in how our cohorts perform. I know in Wells and Middletown, we talked about that a lot because our cohorts are so small that, from one year to the next, you could have a third grade with 11 kids and then a third grade with 12 kids, and they could be totally different scores because the kids are different and the classes are different. So what that arrow means, like that improving or not improving arrow, that again is over time, what's happening to that score. But right now, again, the snapshot window is very small. So you're looking at from one year to the next year. And depending on the cohort size, one student could change the direction of that arrow.
So is not improving this kind of the same in this arrow language as no change?
Not improving is no change.
Because to me, semantically, those mean two different things.
So yes, it's a great distinction. So not improving could mean last year you had 85% and this year you had 85%.
Which is
You're not improving, but you're not declining either. It's flat line.
Okay, so
It's what?
Use the picture, not the words.
Yeah.
Which could be one
Maintaining-
student.
Maintaining would be a
is the-
nicer
yeah,
word
or-
than not improving, but it means the same
Because
thing.
if the expectation is, if you're already at 100%, you're not going to go higher than that. So you
Exactly.
get that straight not improving arrow, which kind of sounds, like
Right.
something's wrong. But
And actually, the higher you get, the harder it is to
right.
move from one to the other.
And what does the percentage mean in parentheses behind graduation rate? Because every school says 33%.
That is the indicator weight, so it means 1/3 of
Oh,
the weight
weight.
for
Okay.
the overall high school score.
Gotcha.
Does not mean 33% graduates.
it's a
Gotcha.
weighted.
Okay.
Yep. Yep, and they're actually, it doesn't, you can't
third.
see it as nicely in the black and white copies, but I was just too cheap to print color, I'm sorry. But on your overview page at the top, there is a bar, and if you look at this online, it makes it much easier to see. But this bar shows the weight of what metrics were put into the overall grade for your school. The other thing that can be a little bit confusing about this is that high schools have different indicators than elementary schools do. Because high schools have things like graduation rates that elementary schools do not. So when you look at an elementary school, it could be 50% English and 50% math on SBAC gives the weight for their overall school designation. If you look at a high school, it could be English, math, science, graduation rate, pretty soon it'll be something else about flexible pathways. So there are a lot more elements that go into a score at the high school level. So each of them will end up with a smaller weight because there will be more things that they're looking at for high schools than for elementary.
I see. So over time, as they keep this going, those weights will change
Yes.
next year.
As they add more measures
Got it.
to fill out the chart, those weights will change. So again, you've got your ELA, and then as you keep flipping back in each packet, you get to math. And there will be an overview sheet for math for the whole school. And that will just say all grades, and how you know that it's an overview sheet. And then that gives you just a quick snapshot for math for the whole school. And then it goes into the individual grade levels again, and you can see their individual performance. And then most schools have science at the back of them. Science is still a new measure for us. The state just took it over 2 years ago, so there aren't change scores for that. And depending on the grade levels of the students, they might not have a science score at all yet, because they haven't hit the science is only given in 3 grades. So some students won't have hit the grade level yet where they're giving the science test. But if they did, and if you have it available for your school, then I've included that in the packet as well. So I'm not gonna go through all of them with you. But that gives you a sense of what's available. Right now, if you go on and log on tonight, you will not be able to access the system. It is down until the 23rd of September. They're adding a few more elements to it according to their schedule. But it will be available again after September 23rd. And then in December, they're going to add another batch of new information to it, including last year's SBAC scores, which are much more relevant for the work that we're doing today in our school buildings. And then that will continue to move forward. So we'll notify you when those things are available. And if you ever want to spend more time on any of this or look at specific reports, just let you know or let me know. Your principals obviously are very knowledgeable as well and can speak to any of the elements in those reports as well.
So do you need to log in to go?
You do not.
It's all
Nope,
right there. Okay.
It's all right there, publicly accessible.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I know I've got extras.
You were using those for what's done?
These,
Anybody
Need
need-
them for your what's
these are
I've got
extra.
plenty,
Yeah,
46
those are
years
extras.
before.
Yeah. That's right, your second bag?
Oh, no, I have
Oh,
I need a binder clip just for this.
Thank you. No,
Thank you.
thank you.
No.
Light and having the opportunity to read it.
We're only getting 20% of the snapshot right
Oh,
now.
I know,
By
but
December,
still,
it'll be more.
it'll just be interesting to read through
It
and make
is.
yourself familiar with
Yeah.
what they're,
Don't get freaked out yet, 'cause
Yeah.
it's not.
It's only 20%, just keep that in mind.
just be on the edge of your seat.
Why don't you go back and
Okay,
report the next
back
meeting?
to the agenda. Spanish trip, and I will defer to Chris.
So, during spring break, this is a trip that occurs, I do believe it's every other year, that our Spanish teacher, Stacey Garcia, likes to take the Spanish students to Puerto Rico. And so this year, they'll be, I said, going through the week of it. I think there are 9 students right now who are looking to go to. We have 2 more who are potentially looking to go on, so it could be to 11. But we have 9 students confirmed, and then 2 chaperones. Look at this, and so what we're looking at doing is obviously just, getting approval for the Spanish trip. Take them, it does work within the curriculum. I have seen the agenda. It is an educational experience, not just going to hang out in Puerto Rico for a week, which does sound nice, but they will be doing, a lot of sightseeing, the cultural immersion, things along those lines. So, and I know that we had discussed, there was a potential issue with adding a second chaperone just with cost because of the numbers we have. So we are looking at potentially using Proctor funds to offset that cost, that if the 2 students cannot, and can't bring it to 11, which would pay for the second chaperone, that we would then offset that cost. So a second chaperone, we both have a male chaperone and a female chaperone, both staff members attending this trip, as opposed to one, so.
Any questions?
Hablan español? All the,
CUC.
all the, I mean, the chaperones, do they speak Spanish too?
Yes,
Yeah, Senora will be going, and then Mr. Mott.
Mr. Mott, yes, who's gone on this trip before, so.
So they
It's a lot of
actually,
work they could do while they're there too, probably.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those 2 chaperones is a good idea.
Huh?
I think 2 is a better idea
Yes,
than 1
for
regardless
sure.
of
Oh, yeah.
anything
That-
else we
that's-
discussed.
We would have to find a way to do the second regardless. We wouldn't send the trip with just 1 chaperone, but
Right.
we just, so.
Yeah. So a motion to approve the trip would be in order.
I'll make the motion to approve the trip.
So Art makes the motion to approve, second.
Second.
Kristen W. seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the second trip.
The second trip is one that we also are looking to use Proctor funds for, but that's it. We have this year with our 11th graders a humanities course, which is a blend between, U.S. history and American literature. And as a culminating experience for our students, we're looking to take our 11th grade class to Washington, D.C. I do believe we'll be leaving on Wednesday and coming back on Sunday. So it'll be 3 solid nights. We're looking to stay at National 4-H Conference Center. One of known school groups that have taken their students there for. It's nice. They have a nice campus. You take care of both their breakfast and their dinner. It's secure. They provide private tours, things along those lines. But like I said, it's part. We're looking to do more. I guess extend our walls of the classroom. We've had a lot of students who have not been outside the state, and obviously, it's with DC being our nation's capital, and considering some of the things that we're doing in their coursework, that was a nice kind of culminating trip for our juniors. So, like I said, I think it's April. Well, it is April 22nd through 26th are the dates, which is the week after spring break. So,
Questions?
Did you say the humanities class?
it's a humanities course, so it's a blended
course.
course,
Okay.
right? Instead of kind of having a U.S. history, then we blended the two, and this is
Yeah, I had one of those as
Yeah.
How many kids will go?
best course in.
Right now, our goal is to have all the junior class going, so we have, I think, 21 juniors, and then we look to have 6 chaperones. I spoke with the National 4-H Conference Center, and we'd have staff and then some parents go as well. And the reason why we look to have more is as we have tours or have trips that we're not trying to take 11 kids to one place or 21 kids to one place, that we can break up. Another thing, we're taking a school counselor, and we look to do some college visits while we're down there as well for some of our juniors.
How much you figure your budget is gonna be for it?
We're looking at about 15,000 for right now, 16,000 for that.
But the grant will offset everything.
Right.
Yeah, we're not using any, we're not using
It's a
any
great place to bring
funds
the
from the
kids.
general.
So,
We took ours from here too.
Yep. So,
Make a motion to support the Washington trip.
thank you.
I'll second it.
So motion by Jim, second by Art. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Approval of minutes, the August 19 minutes and the carousel meeting minutes from August 28th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Motion by Jim. Second?
Tom seconds.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. You received the warrants via your email. Were there any questions? And Linda has been the one going to sign warrants. I don't mind going to do that unless someone else is dying. Seth,
Well, I
see
work in
that-
Rutland on a daily basis,
Okay.
so I could. How frequent is the?
So,
Every
every
two
2
weeks.
weeks.
Should be
On
achievable.
Tuesday, wasn't she?
Thursday, she was
Guys.
going on a Thursday afternoon.
That's the last thing I'm signing up for tonight.
Come on.
But I can do
Sometimes
that.
it's
We'll be
nice to
following
have
through
a
routine.
warrant signer, but if he were out of country or out of town, to
Yeah,
have
so-
a alternate. Yeah,
Sure.
it's always a good idea.
So
Yeah.
typically,
I'll sign 'em.
1 week if I'm out, but sometimes two.
Okay,
I said I would, yes.
okay. So, we'll do Seth and Jim as a backup, is that good?
Yeah, alternate.
Okay. Is that good by
And should
consensus?
Thursday be the day, or is
Yes, sounds good.
Great.
there a best day for you all?
All right.
I would say call Lewis
Okay.
and ask him,
No problem.
because he's the boss of the warrants.
If someone doesn't come to sign, then they just start sending me emails.
Yeah.
So- All right, superintendent's report.
I don't even remember what I wrote. Okay. Oh, this looks kind of old now. I wrote it in the beginning of the month, everyone. So, obviously, September, August, it was beginning of school. So all the staff gathered at Pulteney High School on August 26th for opening day. The morning included introductions of all new staff, the introduction of the GRCSU UVM Teachers of the Year, Sarah Marcus from Proctor Junior Senior High School, and Tammy White from Pulteney Elementary School.
Right.
And just a word on how we only can have 2 nominations per SU per year. And I guess what they did last year is they kind of looked at, usually you try to alternate schools and which ones had people recently, and that's how we picked the schools. We have many wonderful teachers in all our schools, but we were just trying to make it equitable, just so you know. Let's see, so, Lisa Madison and the academic coaches then facilitated workshops and affinity groups on a variety of topics for all staff. And on day 2, it was building-based and led by the principals. Many thanks to Lisa and her team for facilitating this. They did all the planning, and there's a lot that goes into it. Students began the first day of school on Wednesday, August 28th. Lisa, Madison, and I visited all the schools and found students engaged in first day activities, all different, all wonderful, all the way from getting to know you to going to some of the high school classes, and they were diving right into some hard topics on the first day. The schools look great, and many thanks go to the custodial maintenance staffs for their hard work. Contract addendums for teachers are signed and were distributed September 5th. All the new provisions of the contract, such as the longer workday, are now in place, and we're continuing to work with the union on small details of implementing the contract. That's just questions that they might have, like, how do we do this, or how do we do that? So we've been meeting with them, we met with the union twice, just to discuss and make sure that we're all on the same page, try to make sure that, there's no misunderstandings. And there's the co-curricular study committee, that was just explaining it, so you all have already done that, so I will skip that section. And the next one, the reminder of the VSBA board, a regional meeting, it was last week. I don't know if anyone went to it from this board, no, okay. Well, I know Clarence did, so he can probably report. And on Thursday, the first Vermont Superintendent's meeting will be held I will be attending, and on the agenda is Act 173, Act 46, Act 166, Act 66, and school construction aid. We're gonna get updates on all of that. And I have to say, I haven't heard an update on schools construction aid in well over 10 years. They haven't even talked about it, so that ought to be interesting. They haven't done that since the recession, actually. And that's my report.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say, just in time for the next recession.
Time to forget about it again.
Yep.
Say we can't fund it.
All right, do we have anything under personnel?
Okay.
Okay.
Not this- Oh, wait,
There was
stop.
one opening, but it
Stop,
looked
stop,
like it
stop.
might have been an SU.
It's toward the back, I'm sorry.
Was it a para though?
Oh, contract recommendations?
I saw it. I lost my agenda, I'm sorry. I
Oh,
just
that's okay.
misplaced
Ah,
it.
that's the big list, okay.
So contract recommendations, professional contracts, support staff, and extracurricular. A motion would be in order to approve as presented.
I will make a motion to approve contract recommendations as presented.
Second.
Motion by Seth, second by Jim. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
And there was one vacancy. Monthly
SU, right?
budget update.
That's SU, but it will, that person will be in West Rutland School. But it's hired by the SU.
So there's just, the budget from Lewis, so you have an idea, the timeline, what we're looking at, starting budgets, talking about budgets, thinking about budgets. Is there any thought for what?
I skipped over the principal's reports, unless you really
We thought she did that on purpose.
do them at the very end.
Oh, yeah, Vay, I did, I apologize.
No, we're like,
Fine,
great.
We're
that's
fine. Good.
I'm sorry, we'll go back to principals
Then I'm
reports.
sorry.
No, go
Unless
ahead.
someone has questions about it, maybe.
Did anybody have a question about the principals report?
Their reports are very clear and concise, thank you.
Yes.
Should we put them back at the beginning of the meeting? Well, and that way if it gets, where we,
I think the main thing I had a question on is the websites, and it sounds like you're all doing well.
I want to check it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good.
Take a look at it.
I will. Had that on my list of things to do.
So the budget and the timeline. So the question every year is there any directive from the board to building administrators as they begin?
1% budget increase.
1% budget?
1%, that's what I'm looking for, 1%. Sorry.
What's already in the we're still negotiating that, right? So the contract,
At least.
The contract for this year is settled.
right, but for our budget planning, we don't have that contract yet, is that correct?
No. Right, you're correct.
That's correct, okay. So we don't know what we have to budget for
Well,
a future
there's
contract that will be settled
the
2 years
standard
from now.
number that
Right.
Jim loves that we budget for every time. So,
Yeah.
but I think, outside of that, looking at, last year the budget grew.
Yes.
And it grew after we had gotten the budget done and along the way.
Yes.
Right.
So I guess I would say, let's have a realistic look at what we's really needed. And, I'll work with you guys. I want to work with you guys and, so let's be realistic.
Right.
That's all I would ask.
I'm gonna guess we probably can't go back to the communities with a similar amount of increase than we had
Last year?
last year.
No.
No.
It won't fly.
Yeah.
So I think that's reasonable, that we look at our needs versus our wants, and it seemed like last year, there was a time we were looking at a lot of wants, in place of what actual needs were. So, yeah, I would keep that in mind. And I would also hope that we would be looking at other areas where we can start collaborating a little bit more with classes and different things. I know I harp on this every year when it gets to this time, but that was one of the things that we stood up and preached to the choir about Act 46 and how that would be a cost savings measure offering academic opportunities and making education better. And I think every year we need to keep that at the forefront when we're building the budget and make sure those are things we're thinking about when we're building it, because that was the essence of having this.
Consolidation.
Absolutely. And, I mean, we've sat at the table and we've heard from others that no longer are seated with us that, you know, we just have to wait in the future, in the future, in the future. And I don't think that that is good
Futures now.
policy or good, you know, thinking about those that are living in the present for the education. I mean, it's nice to plan for the future, but we need to educate those that are with us today, so. All right.
So at the next meeting, we come up with a timeline, right?
Well,
for-
Lewis will
Trying to
develop, Lewis,
Remember how we did this
well,
last
this
year.
is essentially Lewis's timeline.
Right,
This is the timeline.
yeah.
So, at this meeting, we're discussing board priorities and parameters for the budget. Do you want to develop a finance committee?
Oh, right.
Or do you want to discuss the budget, the budgeting as a whole? I would just say we have a lot of new members on the
Yeah,
board,
I don't-
and I think it's better that everyone's, I think no matter, it's better that everyone's part of the process.
I agree.
I don't like the singling out of the committee.
If we had twice as many members, it might be, but
Right.
we're not that big of a
Puts
board.
a burden on the committee.
Right,
We should all share the burden.
absolutely. And we'll try to build the budgets, the agendas so that they're not so heavy as we go into the budget
Could
process.
have an extra meeting too, right? Just budget, period.
We certainly
Not for
can.
5 hours, but.
No,
But a lot of times when you build the agenda, you go a little lighter on all the reports,
you're right.
so, and not put as much
Doesn't
time
work
into
out.
that, and.
It never
Yeah,
works
it hasn't
out.
worked out.
Well, I mean, we certainly will be
We still
having,
need business, but.
right.
Yeah,
But
we
it
still have stuff we
doesn't,
have to do.
the budget always gets pushed back,
Right.
and then come February, no, we gotta agree to it, because it's gotta go to the printers now.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah,
Well, I think we can put the budget at the top of our agendas, that we won't have any kind of programming or anything like that during the months we're discussing the budget. And if we get to a place where there's a stalemate and we need to schedule another meeting, we'll certainly do that. The other question is, and it kind of goes along with this, we had talked at one point when we were rotating last year that as months with inclement weather come on, we had talked December, January, February about just meeting here. And so I'm just bringing that back up, if that's something, because if that is something we're going to do, then I think we need to just have disclosure and put that on our calendars, that those meetings would be held here. In the event, you know, rarely do you get people during budgeting, but who knows?
Talk about the mascots then. Then they'll come.
So any thoughts on that, or do people want to continue to move from building to building?
Yeah.
I don't care. It was this discussion last March when we were setting all of those
Right.
things in place, and we said we would,
We could adjust it, if we see a storm come in, we could say, well, we'll go to West Rutland, otherwise we could just rotate to the schools, right?
That's fine.
As long as it's warned ahead
Yeah.
of time, that's the hard
Yeah,
part.
yeah,
is
but-
Oh, that's true, you can't change
Yeah, I know,
the
I have to
location.
change it.
unless-
I just thought,
Just no one will
since
show up and we don't have a
since those are
quorum
probably
and-
going to be the heavy budget months, if that's where we're gonna be here, if
Better
people
off in
want to
one.
come, it gives them the ability just to plan, so. It doesn't make any difference to me, but, I mean,
He's got on here November as the final draft, so hopefully before then we don't have
Well,
major
that's
snow.
SU.
that's the SU,
Oh,
the
that's
SU
SU, okay.
budget has to be approved first. So,
I'm looking at that.
so,
You chop that
It's a
number
big,
up
it's a
three
big,
ways.
it's a big chunk of it.
right,
It's a big chunk.
it's
The
huge.
SU budget
It
is big.
It is, because we pay the bulk of the SU budget,
Right.
so. Well, he's very optimistic, I think, that he thinks we're gonna move much quicker and if you remember last year, we were in like iteration 8, I think, and at 11 o'clock at night.
Be nice if we had it all wrapped up before the Christmas holiday.
That would be spectacular.
Yeah,
You're dreaming again.
I know, I'm sorry.
Let's just do it.
We've tried that, huh?
So, stay with the regular meeting schedule, move around, stay here. Thoughts?
Which one?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm
Pick one, yeah.
I'm flexible. I mean, what do you guys wanna do?
Want to stay here?
It doesn't matter.
Uh,
I did have a
10 minute.
car issue getting to one Proctor meeting, but I don't remember what month that was. I don't think it was in.
All right, so if
December,
if
so.
there's no, by consensus that November, December, January, February, we meet in West Rutland?
It's fine.
Okay. November, December,
Who bring the goodies?
January,
Need some more candy.
February. All right,
He's
and
coming, I'll stock up.
are there any, so when we speak to our building principals, the parameters are for building the budget, stay realistic, stay,
Yes.
I mean, are we
I
putting
mean,
a
we say the
percentage?
same things every year. We gotta slash and burn and slash and burn. But let's just be realistic on what we have to spend. You know, we had $1 million increase last year, and we can't do that again.
What were the
So
main drivers? What were the main
everything,
areas where?
labor,
So nickel and dime.
wages and benefits is
Wages and
70%
benefits
of
were
our
the main thing.
budget.
We added a lot of staff
Yeah.
last year, a lot.
So adding staff
Well-
is one thing that's probably easier to sell to the community versus exorbitant increases.
Well, I
for
think-
status quo numbers.
And I think maybe that's another piece we have to look at. That was not to go back to Act 46, but that was another component that we said we need to do a survey, analyze what we have in our buildings and what we're duplicating. And that's not something that we have done as we sat here today. So when you come back and say we need to add staff, it's a difficult pill to swallow, I think, because we've never done that first piece of analyzing staff in buildings to see what we're duplicating from building to building. So,
Well, it's,
But it should be a simple story, right? So if we're increasing it by a person, there's a reason behind that. And it should be a very clear reason as to why that is. And if it's not crystal clear, then isn't it just no, please come back with a new plan? Right? So,
for example, like West Rutland needed another math teacher, right? As I recall.
Yep.
They had one, you had one for the whole school. One for the whole school, right? So we didn't go to Proctor and Pulteney and say, your math teacher is now gonna go, we're not gonna add another person, because they couldn't do anymore. And plus the geography is against us here. Like, we're not on the same schedule.
we are, we will be, and that's
will be.
the beauty of the
But we weren't
contract.
at the time.
No, but that's, but for all intensive purposes, we are. And that's something we need to look
So
at
even
when
if
we're
say we're on the same
building
schedule,
the budget.
It's still half an hour to 40 minutes between one school and, or whatever,
Right,
you
but
know?
we're doing a class here, and we're doing it through technology. That was something we have listened to Greg tell us is within the realm. That's something we're going to do. We sat in this room multiple times and heard that about the expansion of academic opportunities would come through the superior technology, I believe, has actually been used several times that we have here in this SU. I'm just saying, we can't come to meetings and say this is what it is and it looks so pretty when you wrap it up. And then when push comes to shove, we can't do it.
Right, so.
Because we've done that
My
too
point
many
is,
times.
last year, we did not do that. We
No.
hired another math teacher
Yep.
because there was one for a whole building. So this
But-
year, I
and-
think what Lisa's getting at is
Yeah, and we
re-looking at
understand
that
for
stuff.
sure. And last year, the budget was presented very differently to us too. It was like, what do we absolutely need to be here as a performing school? So we kind of put out our wish list and it was granted.
Well, that was like.
It was
but-
last minute, but it happened. We kind of went around the room and physically said what we wanted. And
Yeah,
that's
but
how
the
it happened.
first directive was come back with a.
The first directive was, but the final one was.
And
what
one,
do you
and
want?
one
And we-
principal came back.
Right, the
didn't sit around
board,
and say
the board
nothing.
changed direction. It did. It
It
said,
completely changed. for us.
yes, I.
It did, but we got it
specifically
done
was
and it got
shocked when
passed.
somebody
Right,
said-
exactly.
right.
And now we know where.
I just
We
don't,
wanna see
I don't wanna
fiscally
get
responsible.
stuck talking about the
Yeah.
same thing
I
for
completely
hours and
agree.
hours and hours. I
sure.
wanna get action.
Just do it.
I wanna move forward.
So this,
Yeah, you
yeah,
gotta do the budget on a different night.
yeah,
The budget on the same,
so we're not here for,
it doesn't
but,
work.
Well, we just come and do the budget. I mean, we don't have that much business to take care of.
that's what I said.
Warrants are signed ahead of time. All you have to do is approve that and,
It would be better if we did it that way.
Signed after.
It would be better if we just focused on the budget in one of the meetings.
And all the reports, superintendent's principals, it could just be for your review only.
Right,
And if we have
Exactly.
questions,
Read it to you.
right, exactly.
yeah. And those should eventually be going up on the websites,
Correct.
so.
The principal's report, we can definitely, I mean,
They're up,
it would be
mine's up.
very easy to do.
Maybe when they update all the board members.
It's been quite a revolving door.
I do know that she was getting a list
Revolving
last
door.
week because I brought that to her attention.
of course, it changes every.
Well, Greg knew that at the last meeting when we met in Polton Elementary School. It was, or Proctor, it was
Anyway,
clear.
um,
All right, so those are the parameters, great.
are we clear? Wait, cause last year I felt like it was clear and then it changed,
No, no
so.
chance.
I need to rub
So,
it in.
is being realistic does not seem very specific to me, because
I think we get it.
assume you're all realistic all
Yeah.
the time.
I do.
Well, actually, we just kind of heard that the very end wasn't realistic, right? It was, well,
It was-
it's a
we're
realistic,
just-
what would
let's
be
just-
great.
It wasn't on the principals though. It was us,
No.
what do we want? And we said
Right.
it.
Right,
Well,
If you had a wish list, actually, it was specifically what it
Right,
said.
I
True?
remember.
It was.
yes.
What's your
And it
wish
was
list?
like,
We're gonna give it to you.
Every
It was
year, we
approved.
always have
Yeah.
to cut, let's just give it
I'm
to
not
them
gonna
this
say
year.
nothing.
That was the framing of
You
it
ask me my
by
wish list, I'm gonna
President
give
of
it
the
to you.
board at
That's a
that
board
time said,
topic.
let's shoot the
So-
world and,
Yeah.
correct?
He said he was gonna go and advocate for the budget.
Yep.
I'll go out on the stump, his
We're
words.
gonna shoot the moon.
Didn't work out, but the budget passed.
Yep.
Yep.
And you got what you needed.
Yep.
And so, let's
not gonna
be
happen.
tight with our budget this year,
Moving forward.
right? Okay?
all right,
prudent.
okay. What else do we have? Monthly budget update, and that's in your packet from Lewis for your review. He's, also included kind of the update for the food service. And I noticed in Kristen's, you're like down to $46 or something, so,
Great.
yeah.
I used to work at a bank.
So you've been doing collections?
I'll give you my
Something
list.
like that.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
So future meeting, next meeting, October 21st, Bolton Elementary, budget, or, Jesus, I have a budget on the brain now. Agenda items for the next meeting.
Baseball coach.
Okay, baseball,
since April. I've been.
West Rutland baseball coach.
I also
This is
have
true.
written down during the meeting, job descriptions have to come back,
Yep.
baseball coach. Drafts we may have an agenda item on, building usage at PES.
Lisa, I know you had said something about our Boston trip.
So I think
But-
trips need to start coming a little earlier. Actually, I think it says, it used to say in policy, I'm not sure.
Only if they're overnight, though, it says. I just looked at the policy.
Yeah,
It
but-
doesn't say day trips have to come to the board.
But you're going out of state.
Doesn't say it.
Historically, state,
In Proctor, we have, but
Yeah.
I know in Politely they haven't, so I think. we have to-
really?
In the policy, it doesn't say.
Yeah, because they do a Boston trip every year.
Really? And they've never come?
We've always
They
given,
have.
we've always given an agenda and given
Right.
the
Right.
itinerary.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
But not approval. Okay.
okay. I guess that's something we need to look at as a board. I think if, we're sending people out of state, that we should probably have notice of that, so,
It's up to you guys.
I mean,
I guess.
I know.
So what's the main concern? Why is the board
Safety.
concerned?
because if something happens, the board is,
It's liability topic.
yeah.
But when
So-
you
so-
talk about Poultney, you've got kids going over
To New York State.
to New York State every day,
Ticonderoga.
like from Wells and, well, that,
Yeah, they do a trip
Well,
to
I'm just
Maine.
wondering, if we're going to do it, do we have to do it for every trip? Because there are trips that,
They go to Maine, right? There's a trip to Maine for middle school. A day, I think.
I don't know, I guess that's the
Trip to
difference of the
Maine.
meeting of the minds. Whenever our kids have gone out of state in Proctor, it has always come to the board, because trips are supposed to have an educational component. So they come with the itinerary and discuss what that educational component is,
Yeah.
because you're endorsing that. I don't know, like, is that trip fully funded by fundraising then, or is there a general fund?
which one, the Boston trip?
Yeah,
Fundraising.
and the other, the trip to Maine is,
That's not,
That's, I think that's middle school, and I think that's all at the kids'
if I could
cost.
maybe
too.
make a suggestion. One of the things I've been looking at is there was a procedures committee that was last year, and procedures basically are the administrators drawing up how they're going to carry out the policies. And I've been thinking we should be doing a procedures committee because we have several procedures that really aren't in place. I call it like year 2 of the merger. So maybe that's something we can look at, draw up a procedure for field trips,
sure.
and then,
Because it used to say in
Right.
our policy that, for example, senior trips and like that were to come to the board in September for approval.
and those are overnight, aren't
The only thing that's in the
is overnight.
is overnight now. Yep.
So,
Okay,
so it might be, the procedure might be inform the board, that could be part of a principal's report, we have
Like
these
upcoming
going
field
out.
trips?
Yeah, but
we
we can talk
remember.
about that instead of
yeah.
trying to
There's a-
hash it out now,
Yeah, there's a couple different avenues. I mean,
Yeah,
one is
exactly.
liability and one is there an educational component? And
Right.
there's interest in both. But the liability piece in reality should probably be structured from policies and procedures. And almost, we
Right.
basically you set it and forget it and make sure that there's policies in place. And I mean, things like insurance policies as well.
Yeah.
And then an informational for approval for is this okay? I can understand that, but
Yep.
the liability piece shouldn't be flexible. It should be a fixed, I imagine, I don't
Well,
know
the
how your
liability
insurance
piece,
works.
no, we have that covered with
Right.
our liability insurance policy, that's not an issue.
Okay.
You might not see it next month, but in another month or two. We'll see how.
Are there requirements for criteria for chaperones, just in the general world, anything in the statutes, et cetera? Should the
Has-
school be
yeah.
looking into?
We have
Background check
to
forms
do
we have to
a
pass and-
background check on them.
Yep.
And for what type of trip versus others?
any trip.
All trips.
Anything,
Any
volunteer
contact
work,
with-
anything in
Any-
school.
yeah.
Be in the building essentially.
Yep.
When is that disclosed to a chaperone, actually?
It's
right?
put out in.
It's in the handbooks, all the
Yeah.
handbooks, I think.
There's a form.
Yep.
And it's only if, they don't get approval.
That they get notified.
And I
That
think
they get
it's good
notified.
for,
2 years.
Good for 2 years. They're quite strict about it on the state level, too.
We stick it in our
Sure.
registration
Should
packet,
be.
just so all
Ours
families
is
have
in there.
access to
Ours
it.
is-
Right.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, right, I've actually never chaperoned, so I have no clue.
Well.
But it's,
No, you have to go through a records check, and Debbie Dombrakis does that. And if anything comes back, then it comes to my attention, and I have to take a look at it and say yay or nay. I mean, some things it's
Awesome.
totally off the table,
right.
some things, and then some things like, well, sometimes we get DUIs and
When
things
they're
like
20
that.
or
You
something
know,
like
and they're
that.
20 years old, but it follows you. People,
It does.
that stuff
Yeah.
follows you for a very long time.
I feel like Joe said when my first spring doing this, I feel like he also said they have a high school policy that parents actually can't be chaperones. 'Cause they've had issues with parents on trips.
that's
So they try to
interesting
get
because they
staff
have
or other
parents
folks.
that are class advisors.
Right.
And we wouldn't have chaperones if we didn't
We
have
same with
parents.
us.
I know,
Yeah.
but
To help
I have
us.
this memory of him
That's-
specifically talking about having issues with parents
I
not
don't remember.
Parents
appropriate
being class
behavior.
advisors, that's what he's talking about,
No,
isn't it?
no, this was
He has
years
parents
ago.
that are class advisors.
This is just a chaperone on a field trip, like going to the
Is
amusement
there also
park
a
or something, like,
or are we talking about just a random?
but maybe
parent?
that's
Like,
my
Yeah,
bad memory.
that's-
All right, any other,
Anybody that's.
So this was
that
before the
you
merger.
would still-
agenda items?
What were the three? Baseball coach, building usage at PES,
And the job description?
job descriptions.
Also the survey plan, right? Plan for a survey plan or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Survey. That's a lot besides the budget already.
Right.
Well,
And then all you need is another executive session.
right.
Right.
So,
So.
and I have one, I'm not putting it on the agenda till after we, finish budgets, but I would like us to re-look at, varsity sport credit for PE. And when I brought it up before, and it was given to the ADs and principals to look at, I was told that nobody in Vermont does that. And Twin Valley does that. It's even on their website that they do that. So, it's not so out of the realm. And I think it's something when we're looking at, their paths and all these kinds of things, that it's something we need to look at. When a kid is a junior or senior, taking a year of PE instead of taking another academic course that they have real interest in, I think that's problematic. So,
Would you be getting rid of gym teachers?
getting rid of gym teachers? Well, gym
'Cause,
teachers,
If you figure the percentage, I'm not sure about Pulte, but I know West Rutland and Proctor, probably
So-
80% of high school kids play varsity sports.
in Twin
So
Valley,
you're gonna run out of, who are they
Well, they
gonna,
wouldn't all not take PE.
they're
only
still
if they have-
required to
if there's
take a quarter or
State
a
regulated.
half semester.
Yeah.
But currently now you need a year and a half of PE. And because our schools are so small, and if you choose to take something else, you could be blocked out of that. So it becomes very restrictive. And I just think it's something, it's not unique. A lot of schools in the Midwest do it. A lot of schools have been doing it for a very long time. It's nothing new. I know when I brought it up 2 years ago, a year ago, it was completely like, absolutely not. But it's on Twin Valley's website. You can go on and see it. I don't think it means you're doing away with the teacher, but maybe it then opens up another academic opportunity for them to teach something else. So, and it gives that student an opportunity, if their path or their passion is science or literature or something like that, to be taking a course that has a higher degree of interest for them, that is going to propel them into the, coursework that they want, the college career that they want. So I think it has value in looking at. It's not like we're recreating the wheel. It's already out there.
You know the credit weight? For instance, is one season like a third of a year?
They said three sports.
So 3 seasons equal a year?
Yeah.
Essentially?
Well,
That makes sense.
3 seasons would equal, their kids still take a quarter credit, I think is what it said. So that equals a year. So, I mean, you could build it up however you want. I'm just saying, it's out there, and I think it has value to look at.
And what about the PE on the snapshot? The Vermont snapshot, there's that PE requirement or piece.
That's the fitness, Graham.
And that's not a high school.
They do it at 8th grade.
That's a, they're not actual. We do it in what, fifth?
Fourth, you do it in fourth.
Yeah.
To measure
So
their
you just
fitness
have kids who
level.
maybe weren't taking PE, but they would pass it because they
Well, you
were part
could,
of a sport.
Might not register, right?
you could still take a quarter of PE. It would be interesting to know how
Right,
Twin
half.
Valley would look at that, because they're currently doing that. So,
Future agenda.
I think it just,
All fourth graders have to take it. They don't sign
It
up
what?
for PE.
it's just fewer students
would,
in
I don't
that,
know, but-
you know, if all that's out of a PE class.
Or-
then it's just a smaller.
or it opens up that PE teacher to teach more lifelong skills.
sure.
You know, like, fitness and nutrition courses or those kinds of things, rather than, teaching ping pong and
Tennis.
volleyball and folk
Team sports.
dancing and frisbee and, all of those kinds of things. So just, I think the conversation merits having, so. It could be a 30-second conversation. You can all tell me to go pound sand and off we go.
I think one of the things that we raised last time was how to do it across the board. But if there's a model that we can look at, then that's helpful,
Yeah.
because not,
You gotta give 'em a
not all
grade, too,
I played
right?
varsity sports, but I certainly wasn't on the court
Oh,
most
right,
of the
we talked
games.
about
Yeah.
But I only played one season.
Right.
Right, and I did music too, so.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So we need a quick executive session to
Motion to go
tie
in
up
executive session.
for a student matter.